Hey guys, this is Malobi and you are listening to the Pan-African Traders Podcast. On this podcast, we're going to be speaking with experts in trade across the value chain, on the continent and also across the diaspora. This podcast is also sponsored by Kadan Kadan. Kadan Kadan is a new groupage app that allows you to share space within a shipping container so that you can save costs when it comes to your logistics and transportation. Visit kadankadan.com to learn more or visit the Instagram page Kadan Kadan Official. Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. This is Malobi from the Pan-African Traders Podcast. We have another very special episode speaking with a gentleman that I met online, actually, once again on Clubhouse when it was really hot, actually. A lot of interesting conversations were going on Clubhouse. And he came on stage, he delivered a lot of value, had a lot to share. And I thought it would be great to have Miltiadis on this podcast to talk about what he does, both his inspiration, both his opportunities to maybe collaborate and maybe do some work, and also maybe for him to just share some knowledge in general, so people can learn. So it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast, Miltiadis. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Malabi. I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
I believe what you're doing is really wonderful. So congratulations for that. And I'm happy that you invited me. So I'm eager to answer your questions.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. First of all, that name Miltiadis, where is it from? I've heard people say it wrong a lot of time. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But where are you from originally?
Yes, I'm originally from Greece, and it's an ancient Greek name. That's why it's so complicated. But
right.
The meaning of the name is funny because I feel like connection with Africa because of that. It means the son of red soil, and most of Africa is red soil, so it's like part of Africa in a way.
That's very interesting. Wait, so they have red soil in Greece as well, I assume?
Yes, in several places. It used to be one continent, right? The Pangea.
Right, of course.
As the Greeks used to call it. So.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Lovely name. And your company is called HVA International. I looked to your LinkedIn, etc., and it sounds like it's a Dutch company. Can you tell us a little bit about what HVA International is, what you do, etc.?
Certainly. Well, I'm the CEO of HVA International. HVA stands for Handelsvereniging Amsterdam, which means the Traders Union of Amsterdam. It got established back in 1879, and it was the continuation of activities of various traders from Amsterdam who wanted to join forces. So, and we also have another company which is Kroon 1790, established in 1790, so that's an even older company. And that was a trading branch in tea, coffee, sugar, and other tropical products. So HVA started as a traders union, but then it evolved through the years to a project development company, which is what we currently do. We have a large pool of experts in all kinds of sectors and in many countries around the world, primarily in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, and some of the CIS countries like in Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and the Stans, and Russia, which is currently on hold because of the ongoing situation there, by the way. So our company is basically doing this. We spot interesting opportunities in agriculture. We invest into the agro-industrial part. So we establish a factory, for example, in a region where we see that one could grow rice. And then we set up the rice mill. We have offtake agreements usually beforehand with a large buyer. And that's serving as a guarantee for our investment somehow. And then we start setting up and operating this facility. We make agreements with farmers around such a factory. And then we also educate people around it so that they can have higher yields on their land, etc. In some other cases, we acquire land either through a concession or through a lease agreement, etc. And in some other cases, we serve only as consultants to an existing operation to do a turnaround thing. There are many agricultural companies that are family owned. So when a new generation has kind of expertise to be able to run the facility properly, this is where we also come in, and then often invest also into an upgrade of the machineries, etc., like a private equity investor. So we get shares in exchange of the investment, and we also require some part of the management. That's in a few sentences what we do.
Yeah, definitely a few sentences. Wow, that's quite a diverse range of solutions. But there are some commonalities. Agribusiness. A lot of it is in developing markets, and there's a lot of investment in maybe maybe you help to operate businesses. You also help to greenfield projects as well. So there's some themes there, but just to unpack it a little bit, you started off by saying it started off as a traders union. Now, when I hear traders, or when different people hear traders, they might have different interpretations. So what do you mean by traders there? Are you talking about exporters and importers, or are you talking something more local within a country? What do you mean by traders there?
Yeah, the founding traders, they were importers, and they were re-exporting goods after processing those. So, for example, goods would arrive at the harbor of Rotterdam, and then at the processing facility, they would undergo a certain process and then would be re-exported to another country in the world. So that's the concept somehow. And nowadays, of course, trade in the world has changed, so you have also expertise in specific sectors, and you have also people who take over logistics and other people who take over the processing. We are still in certain things doing from A to Z, like from the production on the field to the processing in the factory to the logistics to re-exporting, etc., etc. But in the majority of the cases, we're just in one part of the value chain and not anymore the whole value chain.
Wow, that's really interesting, and a lot of people might not know this. But for the viewers, I mean, for my research, I found that a lot of the time, Netherlands is actually a re-exporting hub for Europe. So a lot of goods actually come through Rotterdam and then get re-exported to different European countries. Do you know why that is? Is this something that has been going on for a long time, or what's going on there?
Well, it's a kind of a focus that the Netherlands had already in the early years of, let's say, the global trade. They saw that very clearly, like based on what they have. What they have is a small land, and part of it is reclaimed from the sea. So it's not like fertile soils like you find in Africa. So these guys very cleverly thought, all right, what can we do with what we have? And being a hub, it's a very clever position to take in the global plateau of business doing. So that's what they did very early, and that gave them, of course, an advantage towards the newcomers. So they already have existing contracts, and they knew where to source goods. So they had all this network, which they still maintain until today. And that's why what they do currently here in the Netherlands, the majority of the companies, is to find great sources for products abroad, bring them here, perhaps do a small processing or wider processing, and then re-export. That's why you study the GDP. If you study the GDP of the country, you can clearly see this kind of trend. You know, you have over $1 trillion coming in, and then about 700 billion coming out.
Oh, right. Wow, that's really. And that's a lesson for, African leaders. It's all about planning. It's all about knowing what your country or your society's strategic advantages, and really planning and focusing on that and making that a priority in order to, grow over the years, because this is something that's been done for a long, long time. And, the Dutch people are reaping the benefits of it. So that's definitely really interesting. And so you also spoke about, you cover different sectors. Can you quickly run over some of the sectors that you cover as a HVA International?
We are in the meat production, all kinds of crops like grains, rice. We do fruits, we do cassavas, potatoes. We have fisheries from onshore and in the sea, like shrimp farms, tilapia, etc., or pelagic fish, tuna, and so forth. We also have the processing facility, like a canning factory for fish, freezing of fish for the transportation. The same goes for the meat part. So all kinds of stuff, all related to agriculture, and thing also of sugar, from sugar cane. We actually were one of the largest in the world in sugar production once. We even established the sector in many African countries where there was no sugar at all. Like in Ethiopia, for example, we first started the sugar production. And until today, people still talk about the HVA factories and the productivity on the fields.
Wow. That's fantastic. And that's really, really interesting. But when you talk about this, for me, it sounds, okay, you guys are in so many different countries, so many different sectors. So it sounds like a weird question, but do you have any challenges as a company? I mean, it sounds like there's so much going on and so many, things moving around. Like, are you looking to even like expand anymore? Have you conquered the world? What's left to do?
Well, it's a tricky situation, they say that tall trees catch the most of wind. So it's a very, very challenging thing every day. Every day we are facing new challenges. So only in the past couple of months, we were facing a Corona challenge, at the same time with a closed Suez Canal challenge, at the same time with a luring war back then, which erupted as a war later in Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine. And every time there is a combination of a financial crisis somewhere, like, I don't know if you were following the stock exchange in New York, that went down. So all these are always combined, and we are always feeling the effect of that somehow, and in some part of the world. Like now you have the problems in Sri Lanka. That's gonna be felt all over the region there, and I believe perhaps even all over the world. And there are also many other threats coming up. So on that side, it's always challenging to be in so many different things. And to my opinion and my strategy is to not to expand, but to consolidate and to focus more on partial things, like many companies. Look, for example, like Philips. Philips was producing all kinds of electric appliances, televisions, radios, drying hair dryers, all kinds of stuff. And suddenly they started losing so much money without realizing where. That's because, of course, people who are experts into one specific thing, they have an advantage over the others who are a generalist company producing everything. You can never be also that good when you do 100 of different things. So that's why Philips in the end decided to go into the medical equipment only, and to start steering away from all the other stuff slowly. So of course it's a process that is still undergoing, but the effects of this focus are clear. Philips started making profits again, and they are becoming like number one in the hospitals when they sell their machinery. So, to my opinion, this should be also what we should be doing as a company, and that's why we started this kind of focused strategy First of all, we try to focus only on the industrial part. The industrial part in the value chain is an important element because when you own the factory, you can have agreements with the farmers, meaning that you can influence the quality they produce, you can educate them so they can have higher yields, which is good for the factory and also good for the farmers. But at the same time, you don't have the risk that the farmer has. If you are a farmer as well, and I'm saying it very honestly, when we invest in seeds and fertilizers and tractors out on the field and you have a bad year, you lose all that money. It's lost, it's gone. You know, the seeds are gone, the produce is gone. The factory is still there, the machines are there, the building is there. So some parts of your investment is remaining regardless of how bad the year has been on the fields. So the risk of the production on the fields, we are shifting it to the farmer. And we are keeping the crucial part, which is and a high capex, of course, investment, which is the factory. That kind of focus we started doing nowadays. And that's also because of a lot of trouble we had with local communities. People often think that, okay, the foreign company has money, so we need to get money from them. And that's difficult to explain to all people that it's just a business as in any other part of the world, meaning that if there is not enough money coming in, we cannot have enough money going out. But of course, someone who just sees a big factory somewhere there and they think, okay, they have money, why don't they give me more? You know, that's a very valid, however, request. I would have done exactly the same if I were a farmer somewhere. I would be thinking, I just want to increase my income. So for answering this, why not more, we are therefore focusing on educating them because it's a knowledge-intensive thing to produce more. There is no magic in it, there's no abracadabra, it's just knowledge. And knowledge is something I learned always. You can share it. You don't become poorer by sharing it, and you make the others equally rich. Yeah. So that powerful thing of knowledge is something that we would like to use as a tool to improve both our business, but also the livelihoods of the other people who are depending on this business.
Wow, that's fantastic. A couple of things come to mind. When you say the knowledge thing, it's funny because I did an agribusiness course here in Lagos, and one of the lecturers told us at the beginning of the course that agriculture is actually 70% knowledge, and then I think he said like 20% chance and 10% something else. But he was saying that like, look, a lot of it is you need to understand, you need to study, you need to really understand all the value chain as well, understand how other products affect your market, the seasons, the seedlings, everything else. So that's really brilliant that you guys are actually focusing on knowledge as a piece. And another thing that you said brought something to mind, because when I first started getting into the export game, although I'm still doing it on a medium scale, what I was doing was I was actually indirectly empowering the farmers, because if I as an off-taker have certain requirements, I'm going to pass those down to the farmers and they're going to have to meet those standards, and then eventually it actually has like a top-down trickle-down effect. So it's really interesting that you're saying that, because a lot of the time, yes, it is very important to provide, seedlings and fertilizers and all these things to the farmers directly. But what's happening a lot in Africa, especially, or I can speak for Nigeria, is that the people in the middle of the value chain actually are the ones maybe, providing these inputs, and maybe in return, the farmer might maybe sell the crop for a better price or a cheaper price or whatever. So there is a kind of top-down approach that can be used, as opposed to the what is generally commonly known as just giving stuff to farmers, etc. So that's very interesting that you made that point.
Yes, in an ideal world, I believe there should be an off-taker somewhere of any kind of produce. For example, milk. An off-taker of milk that would educate the farmers on how to go along with the cattle, how to treat the cows, how to feed them properly in order to increase their yields, how to take care of all the hygiene so that they have good quality milk without many bacteria. And there are simple things, simple rules. It's not physics. You don't need to have a university degree for that. It's just cleaning properly your tool, but doing it in a proper way, knowing where to clean and how to clean, and then how to store things. So don't store it in the sun, in direct sun, go in the shadow. It's very basic. You learn it quite quickly, and then once you get going and your production is higher, then you can grow as a farmer. So this kind of knowledge and training should be coming from the buyer side.
I completely agree.
Because it's a win-win.
Yes,
so you have it on all products, like in oranges, like in all kinds of grains. You have teff, you have fonio, you have all kinds of wheat, maize, you name it. So then there are techniques for everything. You learn it once and you can go for generations.
Exactly. And the knowledge doesn't just disappear, it's going to stay there. And it's funny because some of the things you say, like, drying it, here versus here, to the average person might sound very obvious, right? But, some people might not know these things, and it can make or break their business. Just one little small thing. So that's very well said. And it leads me on to a question around, Africa, right? Because I know that your company's got investments in both Africa, Latin America, etc. Are there any maybe specific things you've learned about doing business in Africa? Any interesting things you can share? Or if you don't have any specific things about Africa, maybe you can just talk about what you've learned from working with Africa.
Yes, well, it's Africa, of course, is a continent, and there are so many countries in it, and every country has its own particularities. People here in the West tend to confuse Africa and see it as a country.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true. I mean, you have North Africa with Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Morocco, etc., completely different countries. Then you have the sub-Saharan region, you have West Africa, which is different than East Africa in many aspects, like language, habits, you name it. Then you have South Africa, which is again a completely different thing. Then you have a huge chunk, which is Congo, DRC, which is a huge deposit of all kinds of riches. But of course, it needs a lot of development to be able to tap any of these in a proper way and for giving value to the locals, which is it's been so many years. Africa has been seen like a place where everybody can get in, take good things and go out, and that's something that needs to change. And it won't change from the people coming from outside. It should change from within Africa. The Africans should learn to value what they have, value it more than they value it currently, and understand, of course, what's the magnitude of this value. Because until today, I have the impression that they do not understand the value.
That's very
true. I visit African countries. One thing I've realized is this. So I try also to tell wherever I am, and people tell me, oh, you say it great, but I hope they understand also, and they follow this kind of advice. I'm telling them what you have here is gold. You don't need to dig for the actual gold. It's in front of you. You have, for example, in Nigeria, you can grow moringa trees. It's a tree that grows everywhere. You don't even need to water it, it will just grow. You can use the leaves to feed cattle, or you can use the pods to produce a powder that is a supplement in all kinds of foods around the world. So if you make it like a professional sector and start developing it, you can make a lot of money. In Africa, I mean, you can have the processing facility based in Africa. You can have a chocolate factory based in Africa, not just sell the cocoa to Switzerland or wherever, process it in the country itself. It's a mindset. It's raising money, it's raising capital for specific things, And if you show that I have the input, I have here the production, the produce, I know what I'm doing, I've been educated, and there are so many brilliant African people educated around the world at the best universities. So they can be the ones bringing in the knowledge for financing, for investment, for managing investments, for all kinds of stuff. And that would help Africa from within. From outside, asking others, you are be always depending on the others' appetite to help you or not. But if you find the way to help yourself, then the sky is the limit.
Wow, well said. And I appreciate the honesty, because Africa has been kind of seen as this place where it's all about NGOs and charities, and it kind of portrays a weak perspective sometimes. Whereas what we really want to see is business people doing projects that are employing thousands of other people, million-dollar, multi-million-dollar projects, adding more processing, more value addition. But we're seeing it slowly but surely. But I think...
Sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
It starts with small things. And I don't know, sometimes, about corrupt employees all over, in all layers of the government. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they realize what kind of damage they are doing to investments coming from abroad, or even investments within the country, because corruption is not only for the white people coming in with their wallets, it's also for the locals. Yeah. Everybody is suffering from corruption. But corruption is holding away so many good things. Far more, if these employees could understand that with their corrupt attitude, they are sending out, if they make, let me put it through an example. If someone would make $1,000 a month through corruption, if the country would operate without corruption, this very same person would be making $2,000 a month by not having to do anything illegal, by just having a proper income, because the economy would be performing so well.
Exactly.
But people see, okay, what can you give me now? Give me $100 and we're good. And they're giving away things that are far more valuable. And that's the bad thing about corruption. One sees only him or herself for 1 day, for 2 days, for 10 days. They enrich themselves. And on a higher level, the amounts grow rapidly. And we have politicians telling us, okay, give me that money, otherwise I'll make sure you'll never get a license here. Who is helping who there? I personally don't care. I'm not going to do any kind of investment in that way. I will never bribe. I don't like it. I prefer to give money like away to people who need it directly than bribe someone who thinks that because he or she holds a very important position, he is entitled of asking money. Bribes. Yeah. That's a big other problem of Africa. And when I say that Africa needs to help itself from within, it includes that this kind of system is not going to bring them or their country too far.
I completely agree. And the funny thing is that it starts, it's not just at the top level, it's at all levels of the society. Like, for example, a lot of civil servants, they make a lot of money just by, say you make an application. If you want to, start selling your food in Nigeria, you have to apply for the, we call it NAFDAC, which is like our FDA equivalent. And, you get to a certain stage in the process, and then they say, oh, if you wanted to speed up, you have to pay us this money. Otherwise, you have to wait for 6 months or a year or whatever. And it's just like each person had different, government parastatals doing the same thing. And if it's, it'd be probably impossible to calculate how much money just goes out of, or how much inefficiency it causes. But it's insane. It's insane, the amount, because, if each person is applying for this thing, has to do this, the thousands and millions of dollars that are just going into just giving people money, it's insane. And that money can be just used to make the system more efficient. People will be less selfish. But I think that, like you said, it has to come from within. It's not going to come from another country coming in and helping and educating. No, it has to be Africans themselves saying, look, we're not going to stand for this anymore, and we're going to do the right thing. So I completely agree with you 100% what you're saying there. I want to move on to another. Go ahead.
So from the top, it's just the last comment. When you clean stairs, when you wipe stairs or swipe on stairs, then you start from the top. You don't start from the bottom. So similarly with corruption, you need to start eliminating it from the top and then go to the lower layers. Because if someone who holds an insignificant position sees that his boss or the boss of the boss is doing it as well, then that paradigm, this example is working, is encouraging actually corruption. Think of Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. What he did was exactly that. He started by himself, telling, I'm not going to take any bribes. My minister will get a very decent salary, but if he takes any bribes, I'm going to chop his head off, in this kind of way. And of course, that was back then, in those times, the way to do it. And in Singapore, they still have the death penalty to remind them that, bad things are punished. But in a way, that's worked very, very well. And look where Singapore is today and what it used to be after the war. It was really nothing. It was a shattered land between two enemies, So those kind of examples show that it is possible. Look at Rwanda. Rwanda, in spite of all the troubles and problems, etc., but the way to put order there was by leading by example. Like what Paul Kagame started doing was giving himself the example, and then slowly he started shifting the whole society towards the better way of doing things. So, and of course it remains Africa and it remains with challenges, but as the Italians say, tutto il mondo è paese. Even in the Netherlands, you have this kind of problems. It's not like a unique thing only for Africa. All over the world it happens. It's about the percentage that it happens. So you need to keep it low percentage and not have it defuncting your whole society.
Yes. I completely agree. And well said. It's a leadership issue, and it should be tackled top down. I wanted to talk, just a couple more points before we start wrapping up, because this has been a great conversation so far. I wanted to talk about, funds and setting up funds. I know we had a Clubhouse room about this, and you went through it. I know these are things maybe people could Google themselves, but I think it would be just good to talk to people about, how you can set up a fund. I know we were speaking about a diaspora fund, what was one of the conversations, and you kind of broke it down in terms of, you get a GP, an LP, you get the funds, etc. So can you just, I know it might not be necessarily what you guys do right now, but can you just run through that? Because I thought it was a really interesting point, and a lot of people actually enjoyed the breakdown that you gave.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's say that in a case, but there are hundreds of different ways of doing it. You could have a set of projects somewhere where you have a proper feasibility study done that shows that there is a high ROI to achieve. In the best scenario, you could even have a potential buyer signing you kind of a letter of intent saying that if you produce this kind of stuff with this kind of characteristics and in these quantities, I would be willing to buy it. And then it's going out there and approaching family houses, ultra high net worth individuals, investment funds, VCs, etc., and suggesting them to invest in your fund. So the investment is done by establishing basically a company somewhere in a specific jurisdiction that serves well for the funds. Usually when you are a European club of investors, then you would look for Luxembourg. When you are based in the US as investors always, you would look for Delaware. If you are based in the Middle East, you would look for the ADGM, the Abu Dhabi Global Markets. If you are so depending on the part of the world where you are, investors understand better a specific jurisdiction, so they choose for that. And then the ones that come up with the idea of setting up the fund, they are the general partners usually. So they are called GPs. And these kind of funds are called GPLP structure, where the limited partners are the ones putting the money into this company. So you set up the company in Luxembourg and you call it Best Investments in Africa Limited. That's a fund. And then you are the GP, so you are the manager, let's say, of this fund. And then investors start coming in and saying, okay, I'm willing to avail $20 million in this fund because I like the idea and I like the guys running it. So that here is my $20 million. And then somebody else says, okay, I'll do $5 million. And somebody else will do $1 million, etc. So you collect up to the amount that you said that you're going to be raising. So it's you have an open end and a closed end. You're going to have a closed end, say up to 50 million or up to whatever. And that is, of course, in a connection to the projects you have. You need to show why do you need that much money. It's not like I want to have many money and or much money at hand, not many money. So in such a way, you can start, you can start implementing those projects that you have designed. And the thing is that the fund is also having a 220 structure. So you get 2% management fee. That is for managing the fund itself, the company that is a fund. And then you have the operational companies under the fund, which are the projects. So you can have a whole array of people there that are being paid from the 2%. These are the managers of the fund. And then within the companies, the opcos, from the investment money, you can pay salaries to them. And so you can have really a proper team setting things professionally up. However, the trick is to keep the ROI high. And in order to have a high ROI, you need to spend less. So, that's that kind of balance you need to find in there. That's the general idea, and there's a lot of legislation and all those kind of stuff that come along, but in the end, the specialists are there to do it, and they just ask money. They don't take any hands or they don't show kids to do that. So once you have an anchor investor, or maybe if you don't have an anchor investor, you can find in the diaspora of in the US, for example, like 100 people putting in $2,000 each. And that's a good starting capital, to pay the lawyer and to establish this limited, this fund, and to maybe conduct a small feasibility study for something, That's how it could be done. And once you have one successful fund, then you can have the second and the third, and you can go on. There are hundreds or maybe thousands of companies that are doing this. And there are even huge ones, JP Morgan, etc., that they are managing billions or perhaps even trillions, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. I'm so happy you did that again, because I think sometimes when people hear the step-by-step, it's not so airy-fairy kind of dreamy thing. When you just give it, okay, I mean, yes, there are some more details, and yes, you contact a financial professional and all that kind of stuff, but still, when you go through it, it just makes it a bit more realistic. And when you say stuff like, okay, if 100 people put $2,000 together, that's a decent amount of money, and you can, like you said, you can get a feasibility study done. You can start looking into your first investments. Maybe it might not be a huge project. Maybe you can start investing in startups, but it just gives a bit more realistic or reality to it when you break it down like that. So I'm glad you did that. And obviously, we've had a conversation before. There's different size funds. I mean, there's different funds that invest different amounts in projects. Some funds don't do $5 million projects. They only do above $10 million or whatever. So people have to obviously take that into account. But there's something that we've spoken about before that I'd love for you to touch on, which is the idea of the, again, I'm going to paraphrase what you said, but it's the due diligence involved, right? Because sometimes the effort involved in, doing the due diligence for a $1 million project might be the same effort involved with a $50 million project. Is that correct? Or am I messing that up somewhere?
No. Well, someone who is looking into deals, like a banker or a venture capital or a family office, is setting up a limit. And the limit is there because the time that you spend to look into a deal that is having a size of 1 million would be the same if you would be assessing a deal of 10 million. That is what I mean with the due diligence procedure. So if someone would pitch to me an idea and say, okay, we have this wonderful opportunity. It's, I don't know, a small hydroelectric dam somewhere in Sierra Leone, and the total cost of it is 500,000, and we're missing 300,000 euro. You know, we're not Santa Claus, of course. We need to be very responsible with our money, the money we invest. So we have to do our math and our homework and go and check, maybe visit the place, see if everything is as they described it, the machinery, etc. So these are days. In the same amount of time, I could assess a business that would have a value of $100 million. So the choice is easily made when you have to choose between this kind of stuff. That's why you see this kind of hurdles that these funds put. That's to avoid having hundreds of cases coming in every day so that they can filter quickly, because there's so many things to do out there that if you really start focusing on everything, there's just not enough time. And then if I put it into time things, you know, like maybe at this time, as we speak, in a week, people come up with 1,000 ideas, 1,000 potential projects. Suppose that you need, and it's far more that you need, but suppose that you would spend 2 hours per project just to look at it, just to go through the documents, to read the stuff. It's 2,000 hours.
Wow.
So you have like 40, 50 hours a week. If you are crazy like me, you have 70, 80 hours a week. But that's the maximum, you know, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to... So you can't be just looking all the time into projects. That's why time is a limited thing.
Yes.
That's why I also say many times when I see people who have their brains on their, you know, who are really clever, and they are active and they are social and they have this network and they're doing nice stuff, and then they focus on one project that it has a total value of 1 million and it might bring 1.3 million at some point. I'm saying don't waste your time like that. Go big. Think of a package of projects or think of the big size project. And size matters, you know also why? Suppose that you are a huge supermarket. We have here in the Netherlands a chain called Ahold Delhaize. It's a giant, you know, they're multi-billion dollar supermarket. These guys, they have a problem. They need to serve millions of consumers every day. And they have a limited amount of staff to look into proposals from farmers. So suppose that you produce 30 tons and somebody else is producing 30,000 tons of potatoes. 30 tons is a lot of potatoes for one person, you know, but for a supermarket, it means perhaps not even the supermarket around the corner here. It's not enough. So they really need to speak to the guys with a big size. So they would never spend time from their limited staff that they have available to even discuss or to even listen to someone who has 30 tons of potatoes. But they would spend time with someone that is offering 30,000 tons of tomatoes, or even better, 300,000 tons of tomatoes. So size matters. Matters because you become someone that is being taken into account when you approach other people to do business.
Wow, that's great. That's a great message. You know, sometimes it's good to go big and not shortchange yourself. And you know, like you said, you know, if it's a smart person, they know what they're doing. If they can do 2 projects, one of them is $1 million investment for $300,000 return on investment, or they can do a much bigger one and get a much larger investment. They shouldn't be scared to go far and go big. So I think that's a really great message. So just to round things off, I saw on LinkedIn that you do some mentorship. Can you tell us a bit about that? You know, how important that is for you, and you know why you do it?
Sure. Well, several years ago, I believe it's already a decade ago, time flies, there was a Dutch ambassador, the Ambassador Jan Versteeg. He was the ambassador of the Netherlands to Greece, and he said, I have an idea of establishing an incubator, and I need some people to help me do that. So I volunteered. I said, well, it sounds like a great idea. So I wrote the business plan, and then the incubator was there, and we had all kinds of startups coming in with brilliant ideas, but they never done business before. They didn't know where to find an accountant, or how to draft a contract, or how to negotiate. So I liked it very much, so I volunteered also to be mentor of startups. So it started with the first startup, and then the second, and then they started having success and becoming real, actual companies and getting out there, and that gave me a lot of, this positive feeling, and that's why I keep doing it until today. So I'm just discussing, in fact, with entrepreneurs who have a great idea, and they have the energy, and they put a lot of time into their ideas. So I'm just showing them the way. Imagine that someone is standing up on a mountain, and there is a labyrinth down there on the valley, and the one standing on the mountain can see the way out. So you are contacting the guys in the labyrinth and telling them, go right, go left, don't go there. It's a dead end. This kind of thing, the mentor is not leading the company of the startup. The mentor is just there to discuss, to exchange ideas for things that he or she has done before. That's, to my opinion, the maximum. You are not on the driver's seat. You are on the seat next to the driver, and you are just saying, this bend over there might be too sharp, so you better slow your speed down. This kind of advice.
Wow, that's fantastic, and that's a great metaphor. I can visualize it as you were saying it, and it's really good, and it's important to give back and share what you've learned. I've personally got a mentor as well, and whilst I'm doing an MBA, and I can tell you, the value that I've got from the mentor is for many hours of classes at the MBA, it can't compare to just 1 hour with my mentor. So it's fantastic to speak to someone that's gone where you're already trying to go, and is directing you, as you said. So thank you for that. This has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm sure people that are listening in have learned as well. Just before we close off, can you tell people how they can reach you? Maybe if there's a project you're looking for some person or new partner or customer or whatever, maybe you can send a shout out. Maybe someone might be interested.
I have a trouble dealing with my emails and all the contacts coming in. So it's a technical issue. It's not that I don't want to meet new people or to discuss with
That's fine.
people. I like this more effective and efficient ways, for example, of having a session with Malobi, and then more people can see that. Well, our company website is HVAInternational.com, and you can have a look on our website. If you think that you have something interesting to suggest to us, you can fill in the form we have at the contact, and then it comes to the office with my colleagues at the customer service. They look at everything. We really look at it. There's a lot of spam coming in, or crappy requests and emails and whatever, but we always look at everything, and then we filter out the good things, and then we try to respond also if there is something serious there. Sometimes it comes down to business as well. We had last year, we had someone in the Corona time especially, that he could not really visit other countries. So he wrote to us a concept he had. We liked it very much. We supported it. So, things like that happen. So by all means, feel free to contact us like that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Miltiadis. Again, it's been a great conversation. Thank you for giving us the time to speak this evening. And enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Malobi. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to your audience, and then enjoy the rest of your evening too.